Hey there, Brian Goulet here of GouletPens.com, and today I'm going to give you a look at the Conklin All American. Now this is a new pen that's coming out as of the shooting of this video, brand new actually. And Conklin is a brand that you may have heard about. They were established in 1898, a very long time ago, and the brand died out a number of years ago and has recently been revived. The brand has actually been purchased by Jaffa, who is the same company that makes Monteverde, and they also distribute Stipula and Delta as well, so you may have heard of some of those other things, but they have recently revived Conklin, and they're bringing a couple of pens to the market. The All-American was actually a kind of a flagship pen for the people, if you will. It was an affordable pen way back in the early 1900s. Conklin was really big back then. Mark Twain was actually one of their flagship kind of spokespeople back in the day. You may have heard of Mark Twain, who's kind of known for his writing. But he actually was a big proponent of the pen. Conklin as a brand was actually the first pen company to develop a pen that held ink inside the pen. So it made it a portable pen, which was kind of revolutionary for back then when everybody was using dip pens and the like. So that was really kind of a big step, and Conklin had that claim to fame. So they had some pretty important historical things going on. I'm no history buff, so I won't speak too much outside my area of expertise. There's a lot more that Conklin did back in the day, but that's kind of what they were known for. And they have a crescent filler that they made that is attributed to Mark Twain and stuff like that that you may have heard of. They also have a couple other pens, the Herringbone, and they recently came out a couple of months ago with the Durograph, which is a much more affordable pen than anything they'd come out with before. So Conklin's kind of making this move to come out with more affordable pens. And that's where the All-American's coming from. It's a $76 pen. It's a list price of $95, but you'll find it $76 at Goulet and a bunch of other online retailers especially. And they've got several different color options. So I'm going to cover in this video kind of the full gamut there of what's going on. The one thing I will say is that Conklin was originally established in Toledo, Ohio. They've got some of that branding in Toledo, Ohio on various marketing materials and on the pens themselves. The pens are not actually manufactured in Toledo, Ohio anymore. It's part of the reason they are more affordable is because they're manufactured overseas in Asia. They're assembled and packaged in the US in Canoga Park, California, where Jaffa is headquartered, but they're actually made overseas. So here's a box that Conklin ships their pens in, the All-American as well as other ones. It's a fairly good sized box. I mean, I've got large hands, and this is a pretty hefty box. Got lots of wiggle room in here. So it's got this little sleeve here, which is kind of nice, this navy blue look, kind of a classic look, but not outdated. I like it. It's got a little card in here that has some info about a Conklin Collectors Club that you can sign up for online. It explains a little bit about their warranty, which is all done through Jaffa. They've got pretty good customer service there. And then it's got a card in here that explains some stuff and shows you how to twist a converter and the like. But I'm going to show you all that in this video, so you don't need to focus too much on that. Here's the box itself. It's got this nice gold kind of embossed thing happening on here, and then you open it up, and it's got the pen with a blue and a black standard international short ink cartridge. It's also got the Conklin branding up in here as well, so kind of nice. It's a little, the lining's a little coffin-like. That's the first thing that comes to mind for me, and that's okay. It looks nice. It's got lots of extra room in there, so it's just what it is. A box is a little big for my taste, to be quite honest with you, but here's the pen. And the pen is a really good size pen. I mean, I have very large hands. And I like large pens. I appreciate smaller pens too, of course, but this one is a very good, chunky, hefty size. There are 3 different colors in the Durograph here, and it's called Yellowstone. That's the one here on the left. The one in the middle that I have is called Tortoiseshell, and then the orange one is called Sunburst Orange. All nice resins. These are nice, solid cast resin that are individually turned. These are not injection molded or anything like that. So you get a lot of depth of color and pattern to these that you wouldn't necessarily get with, say, a less expensive injection molded plastic pen. So usually acrylics like this are a little more expensive. To get a pen with this kind of material and this price is really kind of a good deal. And I like the colors they've chosen. You know, it's not a very diverse palette, but they're going for kind of a vintage feel. Some maybe kind of throwback to some of the colors that they would have had back in Conklin's heyday. So I want to just spend a minute and talk about this particular material, this Yellowstone. This one just kind of makes me smile because last year in 2014 for the seasonal premiere, we actually prototyped this for our summer premiere color. We ended up ultimately going with Caribbean Sea, which was a very popular color, and I'm actually really glad we went with this choice. But it's just really funny because we didn't even know anything about this Conklin All American at the time that we chose this color, and we were going to call it, if we had actually gone with it, we were going to call it Banana Stand because we were big Arrested Development fans, and we thought that would be a nice little inside joke kind of homage there. So this is the only premiere like this that's in my personal collection, but it's just kind of funny because it just happens to be the exact same material as this Yellowstone. So in my hand, now again I have large hands, but in my hand I think the All American feels very comfortable. It's a little bit heavier pen, it's 31 grams, so it's not, I wouldn't say it's a heavy pen, but it's definitely, it's got a healthy weight to it. You know, it's going to be noticeably heavier than say a Lamy Safari or All-Star or something like that. It's going to be about 50% heavier than one of those. It is a twist cap, so threaded cap, and it pushes to post on the back. So it requires just a little bit of force, but it'll hang on there pretty good. If you got to push it on a little bit. The clip and the engraving align on this pen, which you can tell then when you're turning it around. It takes about 1.5 turnings to actually unscrew this pen. The threads are a little thicker on this pen than it is on some others. It's not really bothersome. It doesn't bother me when I hold it, especially because it's far back there. My thumb's not actually even on the threads. But for some people, I know that how much you turn a pen is important. So when you are turning it, you're going to have to maybe do 2 rotations unless you've got long fingers like me and you can do it in a single one. Just something to point out. The material's fairly thick here, so I wouldn't worry too much about any like splitting, cracking issues, anything like that over time. The cap is pretty big, so if you are going to post it, it's going to be a little bit back weighted, especially if you have smaller hands, you like to hold it kind of closer to the nib. It's going to be a little bit back weighted. It's not too bad, but it's definitely enough to notice. So if you want to have a little more front weight to it, you'll probably want to use it unposted. A really cool thing about this clip on the All American is it has what's called a rocker clip. So if you want to just use it as a regular clip, it's totally cool. You can just slip it right over your pocket or whatever. But the hinge for the clip, it's a little spring clip here, but it's not all the way at the end like it would be on most pens. It's a little bit further in, so you can actually just push on the back end of it to move it up like that. So when you want to put it into your shirt pocket or whatever, you can kind of push on it to ease the transition onto the actual shirt material. Just kind of a cool thing that Conklin's got going on. Just to give you a little bit better idea of maybe how this pen compares in size to some other ones, maybe give you an idea of some comparables. I think the closest comparison for this pen is actually the Edison Collier. The Collier is a very popular pen. It's got kind of a similar shape to it. It's a little bit longer. I think the edges and stuff on the Collier are a little bit nicer polished, a little bit smoother. It just kind of feels a little nicer. The threads are a little finer on the grip than they are on the All American. But in general, very similar. Same nib, size overall. The Collier is all resin, so you can eyedropper convert this one. That's kind of the big win. And ironically enough, even though Conklin used to be made in Ohio, the Collier actually is made in Milan, Ohio by Brian and Andrea Gray. But the thing about the Collier is it's twice the price. So go figure. Great quality, but you pay for it. So if you want an Edison-like look, but don't want to have to pay that, this might be an option for you. Another one to compare it to is the Conklin Duragraph, which is even more affordable pen. It's $44 instead of the $76. Same brand, same nib feed and everything, so the writing experience is going to be identical to the All American. It's got a little bit different design to it. It's a little thinner pen. Not eyedropper convertible on this one either, but a good alternative if you want that Conklin kind of feel, but don't want to pay quite that much. Another one that's fairly similar is the Monteverde Intima. This one has a similar look kind of to the Durograph a little bit, but it's kind of a little sleeker. It's got, you know, this one's got a black nib, so kind of a different feel to it. This is a $50 pen, but Monteverde, because Monteverde and Conklin are both made by Jaffa, the writing experience is going to be very similar on these two pens, which is why I thought it'd be a good one to compare. And then the last one I have is not super close, but it's a Delta Serena. It's a little bit smaller, but it's got that same nib size, and it just thought it was something that was worth kind of throwing in there with it. The All American comes in 3 different nib options. There's a fine, medium, and a 1.1 millimeter stub. The fine and the medium come in a 2-tone pattern. So they're all stainless steel nibs, but it has a yellow gold Conklin logo on the fine and medium only. On the stub nib, it's only going to come with the single-tone steel look. I don't really know why it's done that way, but that's how it is. And then it has an engraving on the side of the nib where it shows you what nib size you have on that given nib. And then one other thing to point out about the nibs is that on the fine and medium, there is a crescent-shaped breather hole. Really doesn't serve that much of a function, honestly. It's mainly an aesthetic thing. But on the stub nib, it just has a regular round breather hole. It's a number 6 size nib, and it is removable. You can unscrew the housing directly out of the pen if you want to, or you can pull the nib and feed directly out with your fingers if you are so inclined for cleaning purposes, or if you wanted to swap the nib with a number 6 size, you certainly could do that if you wanted to get another nib that's not available, like maybe a broad or an extra fine or something like that. Just keep in mind that Conklin's not going to warranty another brand's nib in their pen, as you would probably guess. So the All American is a standard international cartridge converter pen. It comes with a couple of standard international short cartridges, and it comes with a threaded standard international converter. It'll accept a non-threaded one if you have one of those around too. But the nice thing about the threaded one is that when you have that in place, when you go to fill your pen, you don't have to worry about it ever coming detached and losing your nib section in your bottle of ink. It'll stay nice and secure while they're in there filling your pen. Because there's a decent amount of space inside the body of the All American, you can actually use a standard international long cartridge as well if you happen to have any of those laying around. The one thing about this is you cannot convert it to an eyedropper, even though the pen is sealed well, because it has these metal threads on the back of the grip of the pen. Any prolonged ink exposure to these threads would corrode the metal, and it would just not be good long term. So now there is one kind of funny thing about this pen. So as soon as we got these pens in, we noticed, looking at the engraving, that Ohio is actually spelled wrong on just about all of the fountain pens that we have. It's spelled H-O-I-O. It was an oversight. It's very small, and I imagine it went by most people and they didn't even notice, but Drew here, our customer care manager, happened to notice it. As soon as he had it in his hands, he noticed it almost right away. He's just got an eye for details like that sometimes. And he pointed it out. I talked to Jaffa and I let them know, and I was like, what do we do? And so the whole thing is they've got this whole first batch of pens that are already made. They could re-engrave them, but then the engraving wouldn't line up to the nib and the clip and all that stuff. And so it was kind of like, is this a big enough thing to go back and change and all this stuff? Are people even really going to care? I don't know. So we kind of had to make a call, and what we decided to do was go ahead and keep it as it is. So most of the pens are going to have this incorrect spelling of Ohio on the first batch of the All Americans that come out. On the batches moving forward, it'll have the correct spelling, but it's going to kind of make it a little special, like inside collector kind of thing, where it'll have this wrong spelling. It's very subtle. You probably would never even notice it if I hadn't pointed it out to you, but it is something that I just wanted to say because it's kind of just a little funny, quirky thing that I think years from now we'll go back and say, hey, do you remember when that thing was spelled wrong? Yeah, I have one of those pens, and that's kind of cool. So I'm going to ink up my All American. You can certainly use a cartridge on here. The cartridge is pretty simple. You just remove the converter that comes on the pen. You take the cartridge itself and you just push it on here. You place it in here, push it until you hear a little snap. Give it a minute and the ink will work its way in there. If you're using the converter, you'll need a bottle of ink. It does not come with a bottle of ink, so you'll have to have one handy or purchase one if you don't already have it. I'm just using Noodler's Black here because I need to do a writing sample for the Nib tool on Goulet pens, and I need to ink it up anyway, so it's kind of convenient for me. You take the converter, make sure it's screwed all the way on. You push the piston so that it's all the way down, and then you take and you put it so that the ink is all the way in up to the grip section. So you dip it in there a pretty good amount, you hold the top, and then you kind of slowly just pull the piston up. Now when you do that, because it's the first time it's ever been filled, there's going to be an air bubble here at the top, so you'll want to just push the ink back down and then pull it back up slowly again, and that'll get rid of pretty much all of the extra space. There might be a little bit of an air bubble left in there. You can do that 2 or 3 times if you really want to get a full filling. And then you'll have a little bit of ink left on the grip of the pen and the nib, so you just kind of take a paper towel or a napkin or whatever you have handy and just wipe that off, replace the body back onto the back, and you're pretty much good to write. All right, so I've got my All American inked up here. I've got the 1.1 millimeter stub in the Sunburst Orange, and I inked it up with Noodler's Black, which is a little bit on the wet side, but it's a very consistent ink that I've used a lot. So this is the Conklin All American, and I find, especially with this stub writes pretty wet, honestly. It's pretty smooth. It's not super slippery glass smooth. It is not scratchy at all. It has a little bit of a hint of feedback. I find that is the case with the stub and the fine and the medium as well. The stub I find is a little bit wetter than the fine and the mediums are. The stub is definitely a wet writing pen, but I like that because the flow is very consistent, and it gives a good line variation between the cross stroke and the downstroke. You can see here when I do the cross stroke, it's very thin, like an extra fine. And then when I do the downstroke, it's much thicker. And when it's doing that downstroke, it's going to put down a lot more ink. So the dry time is going to be a little long, especially with a really saturated dark ink like this. So if you want to lessen the dry time a little bit, maybe go with a lesser saturated ink, something like Jirban or Pilot Iroshizuku or something like that. Maybe an ink that's made from a pen manufacturer, because their inks tend to be a little less saturated than some of the boutique brands like Diamine and Diatramentis and Noodler's Private Reserve, those kind of things. But all around, let's see here, this is the 1.1 millimeter stub. All around, I would say this is really good. I had a little bit of a starting issue there, but I was also sitting here talking for a little bit. In general, when you're writing with fountain pens, if you are going to have them uncapped for a bit, you might run into a little starting issue here and there, so that's not anything that's super alarming to me. But in general, this is a very smooth writing pen. And I think especially for the price, given everything else, the material, the features that it has, I'm actually very pleased with it. I think it's a good writer, and I think especially for this $76 price range, it's a really solid pen for anyone who wants to get kind of beyond just the Lamy Safari or Pilot Metropolitan. If you want kind of like that next tier pen, the All American is one that you should definitely take a look at. So if you're interested in learning more about the All American, you can find out more details and specifications at gouletpens.com. If you like this video and you want more like it, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks so much for watching, and write on.